Here's that Attorney General Leslie Rutledge is now coming out, along with the governor, to make their statement.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all so much for attending today's ceremony, this historic day in our state and in our country. Nearly 50 years ago, on January 22nd, 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court of the United States issued its opinion in Roe v. Wade. Because of this wrongly decided opinion, millions of innocent lives have been lost to abortion. None of us thought today would come in our lifetimes. Roe was wrong on that day, and it has been wrong every day since. I have a long history of fighting for the unborn, and that is why Arkansas is the most pro-life state in the United States of America. Because of my team's efforts to defend the great laws passed by the state of Arkansas and protect the innocent lives against the ACLU and Planned Parenthoods and the likes of the radical left, we are prepared to immediately ban abortion in Arkansas with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And today, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its opinion in Mississippi case Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. This case focused on a state law banning abortions after 15 weeks, except in medical emergencies. The case argued that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey should be overturned and that states should be allowed to regulate abortion, not the federal government. On this historic day, the United States Supreme Court agreed. The court held that Roe was egregiously wrong and deeply damaging. For reasons already explained, Roe's constitutional analysis was far beyond the bounds of any reasonable interpretation of the various constitutional provisions to which it vaguely pointed. Roe was on a collision course with the Constitution from the day it was decided, and Casey perpetuated its errors, and those errors do not concern some hidden corner of the law of little importance to the American people. Rather, wielding nothing but raw judicial power, the court seized the power to address a question of profound moral and social importance that the Constitution unequivocally leaves for the people. This overturns the legal precedent that federal district courts and courts of appeal across the country have used to strike down pro-life laws like Arkansas's. This decision essentially puts our pro-life laws in place and allows Arkansas to ban abortion, with the only exception being to save the life of a mother, defined as a medical emergency. I want to take this opportunity to also thank the governor of the state of Arkansas, Speaker Matthew Shepard, who's also here with me today, members of the General Assembly, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, and all of those who've been fighting for this day to come. At this time, I'd like to invite the governor of the great state of Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson, to make a few remarks. Governor.
Sorry, sir. Thank you, General Rutledge. It's an honor to be with you here today on this serious occasion, but important historical marker, as you indicated. I'm pleased to be joined with Speaker Shepard as well. I see senators and representatives here that's been in this fight for life for many decades, and so pleased that you have joined us for this historic day. In 1973, when I was a young law student at the University of Arkansas, Roe v. Wade came down from the United States Supreme Court, establishing abortion as a constitutional right. Today, the court has reversed the decision and said the original decision was an error. There is no constitutional right, and the court returns the issue of abortion to the states. For me, this is a turning point for our nation. Since Roe v. Wade was decided, the states that desired to protect unborn life have been prohibited from doing so. Personally, I'm grateful for the court's ruling today because I have fought for a number of decades for greater protections for the unborn throughout my political life. And as governor, I'm gratified by the court's decision because the people of Arkansas have declared the public policy of this state is to protect the life of the unborn. Let me make just a couple of points today. First of all, this is not a nationwide ban. Justice Kavanaugh, in his concurring opinion, said, to be clear then, the court's decision today does not outlaw abortion throughout the United States. On the contrary, the court's decision properly leaves the question of abortion for their people and their elected representatives. And so as a result of that comment and this ruling, what is the Arkansas response? Today, the Attorney General has indicated that she will be presenting her certification necessary to trigger the Arkansas law that prohibits abortion except in the case of the life of the mother in a medical emergency. Justice Alito, in the majority opinion, said, "We do not pretend to know how our political system or society will respond to today's decision overruling Roe and Casey." Well, we do know in Arkansas as to how we will respond, and the response is because the people have already spoken. And as a result, today, based upon the Attorney General's certification, I will be directing the Arkansas Department of Health to enforce the law and to conduct the necessary inspections and notifications to assure that any abortion provider is in compliance with the law and understand the penalties that are provided therein. Let me also emphasize that this does not put at risk access to contraceptives or other issues that are tangentially related. As Justice Alito said, but we have stated unequivocally that nothing in this opinion should be understood to cast doubt on precedents that do not concern abortion. We have also explained why that is so. Rights regarding contraception and same-sex relationships are inherently different from the right to abortion because the latter, as we have stressed, uniquely involves what Roe and Casey termed potential life. People need to understand that we are dealing with the issue of abortion today and life, and that is what is at stake. I'd also point out that the state regulation of abortions can still be challenged, but not based upon a constitutional right. And this is an important principle. In other words, states can regulate, courts can review, but there's a presumption that the regulation is appropriate so long as there is a rational basis for that regulation. And then finally, I want to emphasize that we need, as a state and as a nation, to continue to support women who have unwanted pregnancies, and for some, they see abortion as the only solution. And that is the reason the legislature anticipated perhaps this moment, or just simply anticipating the need, provided $1 million to pregnancy centers across the state of Arkansas. Also enacted the Every Mom Matters Act that will allow those with pregnancies and questions to call and to get information, to get assistance, to get help. That is being funded through our Department of Health. This is all before this decision today was rendered, but to reemphasize the importance as to what we have done, the steps that have been taken, and the need to continue to support women as they go through what could be a traumatic time in their life. And I understand this will continue to be debated and protested across our country. Well, that is the heart of our democracy. And ultimately, the people, through their representatives, will guide the solutions and the answers that each state will present on reference to this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. In 2019, our General Assembly passed a law, Act 180, that serves as a trigger bill to stop abortions in the state of Arkansas. And as the Attorney General, it is my role to certify whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court has in fact overruled Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that thereby restoring to the state of Arkansas the authority to prohibit abortion. In light of the Supreme Court opinion issued today in the Dobbs case, I am proud to announce, as Chief Legal Officer for the state of Arkansas, that the United States Supreme Court has in fact overruled Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, thereby restoring the state of Arkansas the authority to prohibit abortions. In a moment, I'm going to step away from the podium and sign the certification. But this morning, and I apologize, Governor, but I was born in 1976, so I cannot recall where I was when Roe v. Wade came down. But I will always recall where I was when the Dobbs decision came down. And as the first woman ever elected Attorney General, and as someone who it took a long time for God to decide that it was time for me to be a mom, I can't wait for other women across Arkansas to have that same joy of seeing their child's face that maybe they would not have seen had it not been for today's decision. So at this time, I'm going to step away from the podium and I'm going to sign the official certification that prohibits abortion in the state of Arkansas.
Governor, Speaker, if you get a little close, right into this camera. Thank you.
Before we open it up for questions, I want to thank God, because God is so good that He made today possible in America and in Arkansas. And so with that, I'll be happy to open up any questions.
There's a question for the governor. Governor, you've talked about supporting rape and incest exemptions. This does not include either one of those exemptions. Do you plan on asking the legislature, either in a special session or later on, to add those exemptions to the ban?
That's the will of the legislature. They've expressed that. That's a public policy of Arkansas. The certification is what it is in terms of the exceptions for the life of the mother. I do not see any additional action on that. The people have spoken on that through their elected representatives, and that is the law of the land in this state.
So you don't plan on asking them to take that up during special session?
I do not.
Just a technical question. So the certification means the law is immediately enacted now?
Correct.
Okay.
So Act 180 of 2019 with that certification has been enacted.
Do any of you see? Do any of you think the legislature should or should not look at going further? And, like, some states have talked about putting restrictions on women seeking abortions in other states. Is that something that you think would be wise for Arkansas to look at?
I think today, Andrew, that we need to focus on this incredible victory and historic moment in the law that we've passed in Arkansas. Conversations that are had about whether or not we should change laws can take place at the appropriate time with policymakers. But however, today we need to focus on a fight that has been had for nearly 50 years to right this incredible wrong. And so I would encourage anyone to speak with our legislators, to speak with me, and about potential policy changes moving forward.
It was be in case of saving the mother's life, but what about for high-risk pregnancies, like ectopic pregnancies that might not be, a life-saving emergency at this point, but at the time of giving birth might be?
Well, again, the law in Arkansas states that it is to save the life of the mother, and we have included that. Likewise, when you look at the opinion by the Supreme Court, this was also included and discussed in that opinion. And so we will, Arkansas is already ahead of the curve. We were prepared in 2019 for this court's opinion. It's almost as if we had a crystal ball, and I'm so glad that we had that wisdom and guidance to have this ready.
Would the mother have to carry a high-risk pregnancy to term? Because would it necessarily be a life-saving measure at that point?
Again, I'm going to say this as clearly as I know how and as clearly as the law states. The only time that an abortion is legal in Arkansas is to save the life of the mother.
Speaker Shepherd, I understand that the Attorney General couldn't comment on potential other laws being developed. Do you know what the sentiment is at this point amongst lawmakers?
As far as I'm concerned, there hasn't been really any other discussion. What we have in Arkansas is, in fact, we are the most pro-life state in the country. We took action in 2019, 2021, and even before that. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the law is settled on this point. We vigorously debated these issues, and that's what allowed us to be prepared in the event that a decision such as this were handed down from the Supreme Court. As far as other laws or other things to be changed, I haven't been a part of any discussion on that. Quite honestly, today I'm thankful for the fact, for the first time in my lifetime as well, unborn children in the state of Arkansas are protected, and for the first time in my lifetime, the decision of abortion is returned to the people's elected representatives.
Any other questions?
One for the governor. You mentioned getting the Department of Health to make sure that the clinics are complying. What kind of fines or punishments will they face if they keep on?
Well, of course, the law provides for a criminal penalty, let me emphasize, for the abortion provider if they violate the law. So that is one reminder in the letter that will go to the abortion provider here in Arkansas. And we also emphasize that there's no penalty to a woman. That was intentionally not criminalized conduct. There was only the abortion provider that the legislature looked at and that I signed into law in terms of criminal penalties. And so the Department of Health responsibility is to make sure that any medical provider, in this case an abortion provider, is in compliance with the law. The law says that there's only one exception, as the Attorney General has said, for abortion, and any provider in Arkansas would have to comply with that, and the Department of Health will enforce that.
Governor, is there any kind of inconsistency with the Supreme Court ruling against New York's gun law yesterday on a states' rights issue, and now there's another states' rights issue where they're moving toward allowing the states to make a decision on abortion?
No, there's no inconsistency at all, because the Second Amendment right is enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, so it's very clearly spelled out without any doubt. In terms of Roe versus Wade and what it created as an abortion right, the court said it is not a right, because it's not in the Constitution. So because of that, one is clearly stated in the Constitution. The other, there is no constitutionally protected right, which means that public health decisions like this are left up to the states.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we thank you all very much for your attendance today. And again, a special thank you to all of our legislators, policymakers, advocates, such as the Family Council, Arkansas Right to Life, Susan B. Anthony List, and others who have been working on these issues for decades. And so God bless you all. Thank you all so much. God bless Arkansas. As always, friends, God bless the United States of America. Have a fantastic day.
All right, the governor and attorney general wrapping up their comments today on this landmark decision from the Supreme Court, basically reversing the Roe v. Wade constitutional right across the country. Rutledge saying that Roe was wrong then, it is wrong today, and then signing the certification that now immediately makes abortion illegal in Arkansas, except to protect the life of the mother. She says they were prepared to immediately ban abortion in Arkansas, and that puts pro-life laws in Arkansas in place today. Governor had a lot to say, too, as well, about what he is going to be doing with the Department of Health as well.
Absolutely. Of course, he called this a fight that's been going on for many decades. He did reiterate, though, this is not a nationwide ban.
Right.
Does not outlaw abortion throughout the United States. He is directing the Arkansas Department of Health to enforce this law, make sure abortion providers are in compliance. As you heard him say there at the end, there will be criminal penalties against those abortion providers, but not against the mother if they do get an abortion that is illegal in Arkansas. And and that it does not change access to contraception or other non-abortion related issues. And he did stress that the state and the country need to support women who have unwanted pregnancies. The state providing $1 million to pregnancy centers in the state of Arkansas, other resources to help pregnant mothers across the state.
This does not shut down Planned Parenthood in that they can no longer do abortions. They still can provide services. They just now cannot provide abortions in the state of Arkansas.
Though we did hear from Planned Parenthood Great Plains, which
Yes.
does provide abortions here in Arkansas, and in light of today's decision from the Supreme Court, it did announce that it is pausing all abortion services in Arkansas. And it did release a statement saying 250 years ago, our country's founders said all men are created equal. Today, the Supreme Court took the men part literally, stripping rights from every woman in America. That's according to Emily Wales, the president and CEO of Planned Parenthood Great Plains.
Of course, we're getting a lot of reaction from Republicans and Democrats in Arkansas weighing in this afternoon. Congressman French Hill says, I am pleased with the Supreme Court's decision today that elevates life by affirming that there is no constitutional right to an abortion.
And Senator Tom Cotton tweeting, quote, highly commend the millions of Americans who toiled for years to achieve this great victory for unborn life.
Meanwhile, running on the Democratic ticket for governor, Chris Jones said SCOTUS overturning Roe sets a very dangerous precedent. No matter your race, your age, or socioeconomic background, we believe women and their doctors should have control over the medical decisions, not the government, not politicians, and certainly not the courts.
Again, this went into effect immediately with the signature of Attorney General Leslie Rutledge this afternoon. 5 News is covering this important issue from all angles to this developing story.